Hey there, my name's Brashler, and in this video I want to teach you how to get two Behringer wings connected to the same DL32, but having one connected to the A port and the other wing connected to the B port. Now, if you're brand new to my channel, I'm all about helping you feel more confident with your production gear no matter where you're starting from. So let's go ahead and dive in. Now, to make this work, we need to have our DL32 updated to the most recent firmware, which is firmware 3.1, which you can download on Midas's site or Behringer's site, and then install it via a Windows computer. Now, I have a video on updating and installing that firmware. Down in the description below is the link if you want to check that out. And then the other thing that we'll want to do is make sure that both of our Behringer wings are on the same firmware. So just suggestion, update your firmware, just make sure it's not on a show day. Once we have that done, we're going to figure out which console we want to have primary control over that stage box. So in this case, I'm going to have my wing compact as the primary for this AES50. This is going to be the front of house console for me, so I am going to be controlling gains on the DL32. I will also be utilizing all of the outputs on that DL32. Now this is important because the console that is plugged into the AES50-A port on that DL32 or the S32 is going to have full control over both the preamps as well as fan and power, and have control over all of the outputs. So just keep that in mind. This can be your monitor console if you want that to be up on stage, in which case if this was the monitor console and I wanted this to be primary, then I would put this into the A port and then have the AES50B port connected to the front of house console, which is all the way over at front of house. But the console that is connected to the AES50A port controls the preamps. That is the main control of all those preamps. And the console that's on the B port will end up getting all of those same channels, which is great. However, it's going to be a trim adjustment, not the full preamp control. And the danger of that is if the A console ends up making some bad decisions on gain and distorting some inputs, then no matter what that trim is set to on the B console, it's still going to have that distorted sound. Again, the other option is if you set too low of gains, then you might have some noise floor problems with the B console. So just keep that in mind. Whichever console you want to have as primary, in this case, I'm going to have my wing compact at front of house, and that's going to be primary for this setup. So I have my wing compact here, and this is also going to be the source for clock of the entire AES50 connection scheme. So to do this, we go to setup and then we go over to audio, and I want to have my clock rate at 48K because that's going to be the fastest latency, as well as the sync source is going to be set to internal, meaning that this console is creating the sync for all the devices that are connected to this AES50 network. Now, the next thing I need to do is connect from my AES50A port from this console to the AES50A port of the DL32. Once you do that, then you will see a green light up here on A. Now, this is a very vibrant green. Now, there is one thing that can happen, and that is if the stage box is not on the most recent firmware, this will be kind of a grayish green, more of like a foresty green. And it won't match the green that's up here on the 48K or the INT. It'll just be a slightly different colored green. Now, if it is that slightly different colored green, that means that you will not have full control over preamps, fan and power, and it can cause some issues as far as audio connectivity goes as well. So you want to make sure that it is this bright, vibrant green for your connections. And if it's not, just update that firmware on that stage box. Now that I have that audio clock set and we have a DL32 connected into A, I can go into my routing and I can actually go look at this. So let's go to sources, and then on source group, I can pull up AES50A, and in which case we can see that there is a DL32 right here. And I can press and hold this and see what actual connections come from this stage box. So if I had a different stage box, it might show a different amount of I/O. Now, I have already routed my input sources from this stage box to my channels, but to just quickly show you how to do that, we go to Channels, we click on the channel that we want to assign, we unlock. One tip is to have +1 auto turned on, and then we go find our source group, which in this case is AES50-A, and then we can just go down the line of assigning our channels. And then of course, the next thing that we need to do is we need to route our outputs to that stage box. So we can do that by going to Outputs, and then pulling up our output group of AES50-A, and then we can route whatever we want to this stage box from our console. So for instance, my main PA, I'm going to be having on 13 and 14. So if I wanted to change this, I would just select the output that I want, go to whatever thing that I want to route it from on my console. In this case, it would be a matrix, and I would be pulling up my main PA left and my main PA right. Now, if I wanted to get rid of some of these things, all I have to do is click and just press none to get rid of them. So I have my main PA left, right, and then my sub and front fill going to channels 13, 14, 15, and 16 on the outputs of my DL32. Now, the next thing that I want to set up is the B console. So with the B console, what we're going to do is we're going to connect an AES50 line from the B port to the A port of the next wing. Now I'm going to jump over here. I have my Behringer wing full size over here, and I'm going to show you the setup that needs to happen on that console. Now, one thing I want to mention about AES50 is AES50, again, is a digital protocol for audio to transfer down a shielded Cat5e cable. Now, this does need to be a shielded Cat5e cable, so STP, and make sure to have the Neutrik EtherCon connector on that that's also shielded to the ground of that AES50 line. So not only does the RJ45 have to have the little metal shield on it, but the EtherCon also needs to be grounded to that same shield, and that's going to give you the best connection and robustness for that AES50 connection. The other thing that I need to mention is the length of cable between devices for the Behringer wing is a maximum of 80 meters. So the Behringer X32 and the Midas M32 was able to reach all the way up to about 100 meters for AES50, but the published spec of the Behringer wing series is 80 meters. So I can have a 80 meter cable that is shielded Cat5 from my console here to the A port of the DL32. And then I can have another AES50 cable that is 80 meters in length from the B port of the DL32 over to my other Behringer wing. So let's hop over to the other Behringer wing and get some things set up. So I am here at my other Behringer wing, and I'm sorry about the glare that we have on this screen, but if we go to Setup, the main thing that we need to do over here is change our audio clock, one, to be the same clock rate as our other Behringer wing, which is 48K. And then the sync source needs to be the AES50 connection from the DL32, which is also from the Behringer wing that's on the A port. So that cable that I plugged in from the B port of the DL32 is going into the A port of this console here. So in which case I'm going to select AES50A. And at that point, this is going to start flashing into green and changing into green up here. So we now see that 48K is green, that this is synced to A, and then we also can see that we have devices on the A port. Now, one thing to mention about the new firmware of the Behringer wing is we now have an error report as far as what is happening on our AES50 ports. Now, once I connect that, I want to make sure to clear this. And so I can press and hold clear, and then it will go ahead and clear those errors. Now, this is a great way of testing to see if your cable is having any issues. If you have a Cat6 cable and you're nearing the length of maximum length for the Behringer wing to connect to your DL32, you will start seeing errors pop up more and more. But in this case, we can see that we have no errors as far as our audio goes over this shielded Cat5 line. Now that we have our clock set up and we can see green up here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to routing, and I am going to pull up my sources and go to my AES50-A, in which case we can see that we have a DL32 as well as a wing sitting here. So if I press and hold the DL32 down here, we can see that those inputs are going to show up on 1 through 32. Now this is the beautiful part about this, is that our DL32 is going to show up on inputs 1 through 32 on both the wing compact and my wing B here that I have as my full-size wing. Now, if I go over here, we can also see that if I press and hold this wing, it's going to show up that I have all of these inputs, which unfortunately is incorrect. What we'll actually have on our 33 through 48 is going to be the AES50 sends from this Behringer wing compact of 33 through 48, which happens to be the same as the Ultranet outputs. So if you are utilizing the P16 system and utilizing that Ultranet output out of this DL32, just know you won't be able to really do any console-to-console sends. But if you're not utilizing the Ultranet output from that, then what we can do is we can utilize all of these 16 channels as console-to-console sends from this wing compact, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. Now at this point, I have audio that can come from all of these 32 inputs from the DL32, and I can start routing those to my channels. So once I get my channel set here, then what I can do is I can go and unlock and go +1 audio, go to my AES50-A, and I can start routing and patching as needed. Now, one thing I want to mention about the setup is if we go to outputs and go to our AES50-A, channels 1 through 16 on this output will actually show up on channels 33 through 48 on this Behringer wing that is on the primary. So what I can actually do here is I could go to my local in and I can actually route these right here. So I can utilize some of these outputs for my main wing to control. So maybe we utilize these local inputs as maybe our wireless. And so one thing that we can go do is we can go to sources and pull up our local ins, which are right here. And I'm going to select all of these. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on remote for AES50-A by pressing and holding. And then I'm also going to say receive customization and apply. Now, one other step that I need to do is go to setup. And then I'm going to go to remote, and I'm going to, on AES50-A, enable HA remote and custom sync. Now, the main thing with enabling HA remote and enabling custom sync is this is now allowing my other wing, the wing compact, to control not only the head amp of my local inputs here, but also enable the custom sync to allow the other wing to control the name and color of these inputs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press routing, and I'm going to go to my local in, and I'm going to hop over to my other console for us to do some fun with this. So I'm over here at my Behringer wing compact, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to channels, and on 25 through 32, I'm going to route this from my wing full size that's over there with those local inputs. And so what I'm going to do is I know that those local inputs are coming in right here. So what I can do is I can select my channel 25 and I can unlock and do +1 auto, and I can select all of those inputs from that Behringer wing that's right here. So here's 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, and 40. So these are now coming from the local inputs of that Behringer wing that's on the other side of the DL32. And so what's great about this is I can go into sources and I can click on this and I can actually go and name this, and it will actually update on that console. So for instance, let's go ahead and give this a different color as well as maybe a icon. And we can even name this as handheld 1. And so now when we look at the other console, we will see that that has updated for that input. Now, the other great thing is that I can control the gain of that input right here from this patch screen, or I could even go to the channel and adjust it on the channel side. So if I go to my channel 25, and select that, I can go up into my preamp and I can adjust my preamp gain. And as I'm adjusting it on this console right here, we can see that it is also adjusting on the Behringer wing full size that is over there, which is a very, very cool thing. Now, if we wanted to get our talkbacks working with each other, then one thing that I would want to do is I would want to send my talkback mic down one of the channels so that that wing can receive it. So let's go ahead and do that. I have my talkback on my aux 8 right here. And so if I go ahead and grab this, check 1, 2, we can hear that this mic is working as far as a talkback goes. So let's go to our routing and we'll go to outputs. And remember, our outputs that wing receives from this console is going to be 33 through 48. And so what I want to do is I want to pick one of these channels that I want to send my talkback mic down, in which case I'm going to select channel 48, and then I can go and either pull it directly from the input that this microphone is plugged into, or I could utilize my user signals, which is an even better way of doing this. So let's go to sources, and we'll go to user signal. So let's go ahead and get my talkback mic set up in the user 24 here. So we will select user 24, and then I will go to assign, and then I will pull up my source group as my aux channel, and there is my talkback mic. So let's go ahead and route the talkback mic here. And at this point, as we can see, this is now being sent to this user patch. Now, one thing that I want to mention about this is currently in a pre-fader tap, which means that if my talk button isn't pressed, it's going to be sending to that other console once I route it. So I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select post, and that way when I then talk into this with my talk button selected, it will then go ahead and send over this user patch. Check 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And we can see that if my talk button is not lit, it is not sending, which is exactly what we want. So let's go ahead and rename this, and this can be Talkback, and this will be front of house Talkback. Okay, so we can see that. Now let's go to the outputs and pull up our AES50-A, and I'm going to route this on channel 48. And then on my source group, I'm going to select user signal and then select my user signal 24 right here. And so at this point from this screen, we can see if it's working by just pressing and holding our talkback button and then talking. And we can see that there is signal on my user 24 here, which is channel 48. Now let's hop over to the other wing and see how we can get this routed into that wing. So I'm over here on the other wing, and we're going to go to our source group and we'll pull up AES50-A. And here is the talkback from the console. And so I can go and rename this, and this can be front of house talkback. And then the next thing that we need to do is just route this to a channel. So let's go to our channels, and I'm going to put this on my aux, and I'm just going to choose aux 6. I'm going to unlock and then go pull up my AES50-A and then route that front of house talkback to this channel. Once I have done that, let's go ahead and pull up that channel. So I'm going to go and find my auxes and select that channel. So we now see this front of house talkback. And I'm just going to open up this page, and we will see once I start talking into the mic that this will start showing signal. Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which now this talkback mic is working in the direction of that console, which is fantastic. Now the next thing that I need to do is I need to set up the talkback mic from that console to here, which we can send over one of those 16 outputs that we have on 1 through 16 on AES50-A from that console. So let's do that. So I am at this console, and let's go do a couple things first. I'm going to go to Setup, and I'm going to go to Audio, and I'm going to turn on my talkback to aux 8. And then I'm going to patch my local 8, which is where I have my talkback mic plugged in. Now the other thing I need to do is need to go to the routing and disable head amp remote for this input. So let's go to our routing, and I'll go to sources, and my local in right here, I'm going to turn off on my remote and then turn off remote customization. And now as we can see, I now have a gain knob here for this input. Now if we go and compare that to input 7, we can see that my remote head amp is turned on and the remote customization is turned on, and this is gray. And if we go and adjust the gain, it'll actually fall back to the way that it is programmed on the other side. But in this case, here I have my microphone, and we can get this gain set here, check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we can now start getting this Talkback mic working for our send to the other console. And so we can then go to our user signals, go to user 24, and assign our Talkback mic channel. And in this case, now we can go to our outputs and go to our output 9, and I can go in, assign my user signal right here. And so at this point, if I go and grab my microphone and do a talk, check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we can see that I have signal on my user 24 here going down channel 9 out of this console. So let's go over to my other console, and I'm going to bring my other Talkback mic over here so I can talk into it on this console. And so I'm going to select aux 6 here and route that channel to my aux 6. So I'm going to go to routing. I am going to go to my AES50-A, and we can see that I have a channel right here on A41. And so all I need to do is route that to my aux 6. So I can either do that on the Channels tab right here by selecting and unlocking and tapping on that, or I can just go and find my aux 6 and tap into this and then pull up my AES50-A, and now we have this mic going into this console. So this microphone is Talkback mic for the other console, which is going over AES50-A all the way to here. And now I can route that to whatever I need to. Now the beauty of this setup is really that it's very simple. You have a single DL32 with 2 consoles connected on, one being the A port and the other being the B port. And the main thing that you need to remember is the console that's connected on the A port has primary control over the network as far as head amp goes, or preamp, and phantom power. And then if you do the remote gain enable on the other console, you can end up remote controlling those preamps on that console. So if you say have a wing rack, you can have those 24 inputs as available to you on the network, even though you only technically have 16 sends from the other console that you can get here. So just keep that in mind. But also, if I was needing to utilize some outputs from the other wing on the DL32, I would need to route them through this console. So for instance, if I wanted to have my outputs 15 and 16 from that console on that DL32, what I would need to do is go to routing. I would then go to outputs, and I would go find some outputs that I want to have available on that DL32. So for instance, 9 and 10. So I'm going to select 9. I'm then going to pull up my source as my AES50-A, in which case then I can go and select 47 and 48, which would be from the other console being on outputs 15 and 16 on AES50-A. And so in this case, I can unlock, and then I can route 47 and 48 here. And now the wing that's over there is being routed through the AES50 to this console, and then from this console to the stage box, enabling me to use some outputs available on the DL32 for the other wing. Now, I know this is a pretty complicated setup, but it gives us a lot of flexibility for getting some very cool configurations with utilizing 2 wings. Now, another thing I want to mention is it does not have to be a wing on the other side of the DL32. You could utilize an M32, you could utilize an X32 if you wanted to as well, which I'm going to be covering in another video in the future of how to get a wing and an X32 connected on the same network. But I hope this video was helpful for you today. If you do happen to have any questions, or there's a video that you're hoping that I would make on the wing or really any of the production equipment that's out there, please post that in the comment section down below, as I'm always reading through those comments to find videos that are going to be helpful for you. If you haven't already, make sure to check out my website at drewbrashler.com, where I have some downloads and presets and scenes for the Wing, the X32, and the X-Air series consoles. So go check that out, and that, of course, helps me create these videos for you guys to enjoy and learn off of. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day.